Hi, and it's Patty Wipfler here, and we're doing a Facebook Live on parenting teens, little, very young teens, like children who are making that transition from, the messing around as a kid to heading a little bit towards becoming a teenager. And we've got lots of questions to answer. So I think I'll go ahead. I think I'll preface it a little bit first to say that one of the things that happens when children get to be about 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 is that school and social expectations pull play away from children. And play is actually the most encouraging, the most inspiring, and in a way, the most intellectually integrating kind of thing that a child can do. Play involves the whole limbic system and the cortical structures as well. It uses your whole brain. It's a very kind of nourishing, healing way to be in the world, and children love to play, but school and our expectations that they should be getting older now and should be doing things of significance really get in the way of play. And so one of the things that makes preteens and early teens grumpy is the fact that they're just not having much laughter. They're not getting to be creative in that way. They're not getting to connect with others in that way. Now they're expected to go to school in middle school and sit down and eat lunch during their break time. And there is no sort of recess, no permission to be running around, messing around, goofing around, having fun, and laughing. So we as parents would do well to understand this, that play is still really important, that play is still a prime way of connecting with our children, and that our children still need that connection. So they're not going to think we are as funny as they used to think we were. They're not going to appreciate our jokes as fully. They may groan and eye roll when we try to ruffle their hair or give them a little back rub while they're eating their breakfast before school. But all these things are still important, and we need to not take, their sort of typical flack when we reach out to them, or, just offer a little bit of play or a little bit of lightness. If they're not up for it, they'll signal that. But that doesn't mean they don't want us to try. They want us to try to reach them, and they want us not to get discouraged when it's just not quite the right moment, or we didn't do it in quite the way that they were hoping for. So I think the other thing that I'll say is that as young people get older, the obvious kind of connection cables between us and them kind of start being buried underground, so that no longer do they run to us when we come home from work or from the gym or wherever we've been. They kind of look up and go, hi, and look back at whatever it is that they're engrossed in, their homework or their screens or talking on the phone. So we need to know that although they're not reassuring us in the way that young children will reassure us that we're important and that they care about us and that the connection that we offer is really vital to them. So we're getting no reassurance. However, the connection that we're offering is still vital. It's as vital as it ever was. So in a way, becoming the parent of a preteen means that you have to work on your feelings of needing reassurance to know you're doing the right thing, to know that your presence is important, that the connection you offer, even if it's rejected at that moment, is still important. So it's really, in a way, the importance of using listening partnerships to keep our side of the relationship moving in a good direction. It has never been more important. It's really important so we don't lose our patience with our little ones who seem to need our attention at every 3 seconds. It's important early so that we can uncover our ability to play. But it's important in these tween years, the years approaching being a teenager and shortly into that, to keep our longings for reassurance or our dependence on signals from our children that they care about us, that they know we're connected. We need to wean ourselves from needing all of that. And we also need to start working on our children are growing up. They're no longer little. We have to work to see their sweetness. We have to work to see how beautiful they are when they wake up grumpy or are ignoring our every offer of connection on a bad day. So that's what I'll say in preface. It's not the only thing to say about parenting tweens, but if you are looking for reassurance and sad that you're not getting it, or feeling rejected because you're not getting it, or feeling like there must be something wrong you're doing because you're not getting it, you are not alone. Almost every other parent is in the same boat if they have a child in this age group. And there are things you can do about it. You don't need that reassurance to keep reaching out. You don't need that reassurance to be sure that connection still is the key focus for your parenting. Connection and reasonable limits and play and listening. These are the ingredients of our listening tools early in your child's life, and they are still the vital ingredients of our listening tools as you parent your tween. So here we go on the questions. Okay. The first one is a really important question, and it's it's one we all will face at some time, unless we've been able to be very, very careful. And take reasonable precautions. So the question is, how do you restore childhood when children have seen or received information that is beyond their years? How also to manage overstimulation in a busy world? I think that is one of the factors involved in my child starting high school in the UK and suddenly developing more attitude. There is no way to undo a child having seen or been exposed to material or experiences that are beyond their years. Seeing traumatic incidents, all it takes these days is reading the newspaper, really, to have them have to face things that are just not understandable and that hurt deeply if we are open enough to actually feel what's going on. Feel what we're reading in the newspapers, to feel the many sore spots in the world that urgently need attention. However, what we can do is to continue to offer play, continue to offer connection, and to listen. So in a way, I think what's really helpful to think about during these tween and teen years, first of all, it is important to protect our children as best we can from seeing or being exposed to stuff that they're not ready for. Pornography is one topic that is important, I think, and difficult to talk about, but we live in societies that feed off of addicting young people to things that are not good for them. And the way addiction happens is that a person is exposed to something that's not good for them. And if it's a substance, it sort of hooks on to their physiology in a way, and then they don't have any help unhooking that physiological response. And in terms of pornography, it hooks into fear and embarrassment and shame. Shame that they saw something that they know they shouldn't have seen or heard. Embarrassment because it is deeply embarrassing to be faced with information that looks to be intimate and private, when you have just walked in on it somehow or been brought in on it somehow. And fear because young people can't really understand a sexual relationship and until they begin to feel that pull. And even then, they don't understand the snares and the ways in which they can be manipulated. It's very difficult to inform a young person about the possible manipulation of their wants, their desires, and the manipulation of their maturation process that pornography creates. So if you haven't already, as a parent of a tween, you're going to want to find an internet blocking program to make sure that porn can't reach inside your house, can't reach onto your phones as best you can. There are programs out there. This is not my area of expertise, but you know people around you who have a good idea of how to do this. You find people, do a search online, and do all you can to protect your devices at home from intrusion from pornography sites. It's really, really important. We have a few instructors whose children as young as 9 have somehow, been drawn into pornography sites, have seen stuff that they didn't have any idea how to process. And then because of the fear factor, fear creates addiction. Fear kind of hooks you into wanting to go back and see again things that you didn't understand the first time. And that is how billions of dollars worldwide are made off of pornography. It really basically is a money-making proposition to feed on our children. So I would be careful there. And once that has happened, you need to basically work on your upset that it's happened so that you're not tight and worried and feeling hopeless about it. And then use the listening tools to create enough safety so that your child can talk to you about what they've seen, so that they can ask the questions that might be on their mind, so that you can give them better information, and so that they can ask for your help to stay away from the sites and the things that they were exposed to, so that so the addiction factor doesn't kick in, so that there's one exposure or 2 exposures, and then they can work on their feelings with you. Just in sort of, I think the parents that I know that have worked on this have kind of lain with their children at night and just waited until the child could talk to them about what they'd seen and heard, ask the questions, and as long as you can keep working on your grief and upset about what your child's been exposed to, you'll be able to relax enough that your child can trust bringing up the images that make them uncomfortable, that return in their mind, the things they're trying to figure out, and ask you about them and talk to you about them and perhaps cry about them. So in a way, child's play, is a huge antidote to seeing and hearing things that are, that are beyond a child's ken. And so I think play and special time are kind of the way to build enough trust so that your child can begin to talk to you about what they've been exposed to. That's true in early childhood, and that's true, in the tween years as well. And that's all I'll say there, is that all the listening tools will be needed. Anytime you're trying to undo a fear, whether it's, leading to an addiction, or whether it's a fear of something that children should ordinarily not have to deal with, all the listening tools are going to be needed to get that sticky emotion to heal that sticky emotion and free them from feeling bothered by the thoughts that occur to them unbidden because they were exposed. Okay. Okay, best response to I hate myself. It's not a regular thing that my child says, but it would be good to have a go-to response, especially as my 9-year-old daughter has moved past the stage of always wanting a hug for comfort. So I think that our expectation that there would be a go-to response for anything that our children do is kind of a funny expectation, because our goal is to really take each thing that our children do and say as a fresh incident, unlike the last time they did and said that, because they're in a different place and they are responding to a different stress. You know, they've lost their ability to see their own goodness for a different reason this time. And so I don't think there's any one response you want to do over and over again. The second time you do that one response that's supposed to be a tip from me, say, the second time you do it, they're going to look at you like, oh, not this again. Because children have a really, as they become teens, they develop a stronger and stronger sense of when their parents are, for lack of a better word, bullshitting. Sorry, but I couldn't think of anything better there. When their parents are kind of in a habitual groove. And so pretense that we know what we're doing and we are the expert, I don't know, they just have a really strong sense of when parents are pretending and when they are, you know, kind of in a rut, in a response rut. So we don't really want to adopt the same response. Sometimes I hate myself could bring, oh, tell me what made you feel that way. You know, an invitation to look at what was the trigger for that. Do you want to talk about it? Excuse me. So that would be one response, just tell me more. Another response would be to just say, how can I help you with that? And let a child direct what happens next. Because a child might say, oh, I just need a hug. Or they might say, I don't know. I don't know what you can do, you know. Or a child might say, just let's snuggle, or let's read a book. Or they might have an idea and you could ask. One response that I have seen work very, very well, but it's not one to use all the time. Again, you kind of want to feel your way along, trust your best judgment, and do an experiment rather than come up with, you know, an old chestnut of a response. But this one is good. It's kind of like, oh no, those I hate myself bugs, they must be bothering you. Let me see. And you go over and you just kind of go through your child's hair as if it was lice that you're trying to find. Oh, here's one right here. And you find an imaginary I hate myself bug and you, ew, let's stomp on it. You throw it down, you know, it's an imaginary thing. You throw it down on the floor and you squish it with your toe. And I bet there's more around there. Let me see what I like. And you look under their arm and you look between their fingers and you pull their pockets out to see if there's any bugs in there. And it's kind of just a little light, playful, you know, I'm not worried about you. We're just going to play with this feeling that you have, or I'm going to give you an imaginary fix and, you know, see if that goes over. It's like, it's not the magic answer to everything. It's not going to work every time, but it's friendly. It's physical, but not intrusive. It's got a little humor to it. Oh, I found one. What shall I do with it? You know, you can get your child involved in the in the playful response. So that's one. Oh, sweetie. What about tonight I lie down with you, and if you want to talk about it some more, we can. You know, you can just propose if you're in the middle of cooking dinner and you don't have your wits about you to really get into a long, deep conversation, you know, that your child just walks by and drops that little bomb, but, you know, it's a busy time. You could just set up a time or say that you'll be a listener at a time in the near future, and try to park it. I don't know. Those are the things that I think of, but in a way, that feeling of, you know, there's something wrong with me and I'm really unhappy with myself is a symptom of a lack of connection or of a hurt that's back there. And the overall response needs to be finding ways to do more special time, finding ways to integrate play into the family routine on a regular basis, play that your child enjoys. And so I'm really emphasizing play because it's so important. So the ways that families create a play groove, sometimes these grooves are based on what the child loved to do when they were little. You know, if you had a child that just loved for you to give them horsey rides around the house, and they used to laugh and giggle and laugh and giggle, and somehow that was a thing that you always did, there's no reason why you have to stop giving them horsey rides around the house. You'll be slower. You're not going to be as swift as you were when they just weighed, 40 pounds. But there's no reason why you can't, say, come on, hop on, I'll give you a ride around. Every now and then with your older child. They may go, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. But you can just kind of wiggle your butt and, oh, aren't you tempted? Aren't you tempted to just hop on? So you don't have to take, an immediate no, you ridiculous parent, you, as the final answer. You can cajole, you can tempt, you can kind of dangle a fun little moment. Oh, just for 3 seconds, hop on, let's see if I can carry you. Oh, Mom, you can't do that. Oh, I bet I can. Might only be 3 seconds, but let's give it a try. So you kind of want to be, in a way, we have to relearn how to flirt, how to offer our attention and assume that we're going to be able to find a way to lure you over here to have something fun happen. You kind of want to have a little sparkle in your eye and a little, not too much investment in what exactly happens, just a little moment of connection, a little moment of an offer, even if they just, Mom, no, I said no, and I mean no. Okay, I'll try again. You don't have to be wilted because your child rejects you at that moment. And when you find yourself wilting, that means listening partnership is necessary. It's like we need, in a way, we need to take the responses of no, not now. I just can't receive your offer. I've got so much stuff in my head, I can't focus on you at all. These are all legitimate states that our children are in at this age. Their minds are very, very busy with trying to figure out the social scene, trying to feel okay about themselves, trying to do a ton of schoolwork and meet expectations there, or trying to not meet expectations there, and that takes a lot of intellectual space in their brain. How to rebel successfully. That can take up a lot of time. So they are busy doing necessary things, necessary experiments, responding to a much more challenging environment than they were in elementary school. And we just need to know that, the state they're in sometimes is just not one in which they can allow a connection or reveal to you that they're open to a connection. Sometimes they're really open, but they cannot show you. They're in a moment of rebellion right now, and the need for connection and the desire for it is under the surface, so they don't even know it's there. So we have to just roll with what they show us and keep bouncing back like those little clowns that have they're blow up clown, and they have a weighted bottom, and you punch them and down they go, and it's very satisfying. You give it a punch and the clown goes down, but it pops back up again, and you can punch it again. And in a way, we kind of, in the US, they call this Bobo the clown. We need to be like Bobo, where they can reject us, but we hop back, interested in making a connection still. And we may not press at that moment, but we need to pop back and offer again. So let's see. So I think that I hate myself is a sign that there are tears and grief and maybe some fears that need to be released, and creating play, making offers of connection, setting up special time, and then making grooves where it's okay for your child to talk to you. There aren't a whole lot of distractions the way there usually are in life, busy life these days, now that your child is in heavy-duty school years. So I am an advocate of lying with your child at night before they go to sleep and setting that up as an expectation, even if it's just 10 minutes, just getting in, snuggling, maybe offering a hand rub or a back scratch or a scalp rub, or I don't know, some children like their faces to be stroked, and you know what your child likes will be. Some kids want their feet rubbed, but finding a way to physically connect in a non-demanding way and not asking probing questions at that time, just being there, offering a very quiet, understated connection, and seeing what they want to talk about, if anything. Some families like to read a good book, and the parent reads to the child, and then the child reads to the parent, or the parent reads the book to the child, even though the child is a fine reader or isn't a fine reader. It's not a lesson time, but it's time to go together to an imaginary place and get involved in the story and be invested in the same story for a little while. That's another way to make a connection. Any of these things, just kind of setting up that expectation that we will be together and I will be there for you, and you can talk to me or you can not talk to me. I'll be equally happy either way. And where you're not equally happy either way, where you're, oh my gosh, I think my child is in the middle of XYZ kind of trouble, that you take to your listening partner so that you're not pushing and jabbing at your child to tell you something that you just guess is there. Our urgency to solve problems makes it very difficult for our children to confide in us, and to confide in us is what they need to do. So in order to open up areas where they have feelings and to make it safe enough, or to build the safety that they can reveal those feelings to us and release the tension in tears or trembling or anger. So there's another question related to this. Let's see. No, I can't find it at the moment. When you have tried to remain calm and keep your cool all day while suffering attack after attack from your tween because they lost their phone privilege, and you finally snap and lose your mind, how do you repair the damage the next day? Well, first of all, of course this happens. It's like we all blow it as parents because we don't have enough support, or because we have no idea that there is such a trigger, such a hair trigger in this particular place. And so we just kind of walk right into a situation not knowing how easily we're going to be triggered. And then va-voom, we are lost, and it's not a happy moment. And once we see this, once we see a trigger that, leapt out of the dark and, grabbed us and took us away, that's a really good topic for a listening partnership. So I think one response is to go release the grief and the upset and the embarrassment of having had a moment like that, and to finish the anger response. It's like we were just getting going with a really heated anger response when we realized, oh my God, I've got to stop this. And we didn't finish the lecture we really wanted to deliver. And so using a listening partner to deliver the whole lecture 5 times over with all the heat that it deserves, it needs to go somewhere. And oftentimes there are deep feelings underneath that anger response that are really, really fruitful to get to, because that really deconstructs the trigger. So that's one thing to do after we've blown it. And the second thing to do is to say, just again, we don't want to ambush our children with heavily freighted interactions. They walk home from school, they're tired, they're hungry, they walk in the door, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry for last night, and that is kind of a freighted maybe afraid of interaction, especially if we haven't gotten listening time yet. So they're seeing us looking worried and guilt stricken, and they just have no space for it, and they just kind of ignore us and walk by. And so the apology, the way we wanted it to land, did not happen, and it's one more feeling of failure and upset. So I think on interactions that have some import that you really want to go well, it's a good idea to begin notifying your child that you would like to talk about XYZ, and to give them permission to decide the time and the place. So, sweetie, I'd like to apologize for last night, and I wanted, so would you let me know when you've got a moment, and I can do that properly? And just let them say, oh yeah, not right now. I'm way too hungry, and let them decide. So, and if they can't decide by the end of the day, then maybe you include that in your little time in which you lie with your child before they fall asleep, something like that, or cuddling on the couch, or, eating the last bite of a really good dessert together. You just then pick a time and go ahead and spring it. We do need to apologize for our children for when we lose it, and we can also empower our children if we're finding that we are getting angry again and again and again because we aren't able to do the emotional work fast enough that we need to do to kind of defuse a particular set of triggers. We can say, look, when I start raising my voice, or when I, start looking like, a wild animal, and I start talking to you disrespectfully, here are 3 things you can do. And think about these things and then offer them to your child. So when you can call, this person, or this person, and say, my mom is starting to yell at me. Would you talk to her for a little while? And you can, you can ask for help. You can tell somebody this is happening again. And I will talk to them, although I'll be furious to have to do that. But it'll be better that I talk to them than continue being hard on you. So you give them someone they can call. You give them a little sign or a little paper that says, Mom, please don't talk to me that way, or Mom, I love you, don't talk that way, so that they can kind of go get this piece of paper and hold it up. They don't have to say something. They can just show us that we're locked in an interaction that neither of us want to be in. But they give a sign that they notice this, and that will help us notice that we are locked in that interaction, rather than being caught in the whole, lecture disapproval pattern that comes up for us. They can ask us to lie down on the floor. They say, Mom, you have to lie down on the floor now, or Dad, you have to lie down on the floor now. And the agreement is, that you will lie down on the floor if they tell you to. And so you lie down on the floor, taking you out of the, I'm the boss around here attitude that most of us get when we are lost. And then basically we just have to kind of deal with what's going on inside ourselves, from the I'm not in charge anymore position. And it takes us out of scary mode, puts us into more or less approachable mode sooner or later. And sometimes lying on the floor means that we can get to the feelings that are roiling around inside of us, the anger or the upset or the fear or the whatever it is. Whatever it is probably old. The heat comes from older incidents that happened when we were very vulnerable and young. And in a way, very little of the reaction is about what's going on right now. And when we lie down, we can sometimes feel the heat without aiming it at the child. So those are the things I have to say about that. Let's see. Okay, we have several questions about children and anger. And we have a booklet, Hand in Hand, called Reaching for Your Angry Child. And that booklet is geared for a person of any age, actually. The principles are the same no matter what the age is. The older a person is, in a way, the more their anger triggers experiences of being with our own parents or people bigger than us, people more powerful than we were when they were angry. And I bet there's not a person on the planet who wasn't a child at a moment when there was an angry grown-up around to frighten them and intimidate them and make them wonder if they were going to make it through this incident. So we have those, and as our children grow, it's those incidents that get triggered and make our own anger or our self-defense mechanisms flare. So as our children get into this stage of feeling more disconnected and also feeling more disappointed in what the world has to offer, disappointed that, play is not accepted anymore, disappointed in not being seen as an individual in a class of 32 kids, 5 or 6 times a day as they go through their junior high schooling, disappointed that girls are excluding girls and boys are making fun of girls and whatever it is that's going on, that boys are competing against one another and really trying to, figure out who's dominant. All of those dynamics are things that kids face every day as they go to school. They're not easy dynamics to figure out, to navigate as a young person. They're intimidating dynamics that can really make a young person feel like they don't belong, no matter how sweet and wonderful they are. So kids are facing a lot of challenges at school every day, and they do come home disappointed, disconnected, and having been disrespected or treated badly, or simply not having had anybody's warm attention all day long, not having been safe all day long. So of course they're angry. Any self-respecting human being would respond like, this is not good enough. And the safest person to aim that disappointment, that I want better and I want it now kind of energy, is mom and dad. We didn't enter parenting thinking that we were going to need to handle, highly upset teens and preteens. This is not what we got into it for. All of the sweet little coos and little romping around and delight that little children show us. That was kind of what we imagined parenting would be. And now we have these children who are facing a world that is not healthy in every way, and having to navigate, having to find their way in kind of a jungle of poor treatment, human beings treating one another poorly, of there being no sparkle in the eyes, no release in laughter, not a whole lot of humor. So they are angry for good reason. We will not necessarily know the reasons, but I think what our approach says is that anger is a sign that there are heavy feelings that need to be released. Anger is a sign that what needs to be released is a mixture of fear and grief. Yeah, but it's covered by a sense of isolation. It's like the hard outer shell is this sense that nobody wants to help me. Nobody even cares. Nobody has any idea what I'm going through. And that's this really hard outer shell that makes an angry child very difficult to be with, because you can be kind and you can reach out, but it all bounces off that hard outer shell at first. Your child is inside aching to have a way to show you how scared and or how hurt they feel, how sad it is to have a life that is not full of laughter, fun, and closeness every moment of every day. And none of us get that, but they were hoping and now they're disappointed. And there may also be particular incidents, particular harsh things that have happened or harsh things that have been said or fears of not making the grade that eat at our children. And so there may be particular things that they haven't told us about that also, fire up that anger. So what we need to be prepared to do, and it takes, in a way, it takes training. We have to consider that we are in training to deal with anger. It will make us stronger people at work, make us stronger people in our lives. It will help us improve our self-esteem and our command of ourselves to work on the feelings that we have about what we're being told. And children know exactly where we are most vulnerable. Somehow they know, if we don't feel socially acceptable, if we struggle socially, we may have never told them that that's how we feel, but they've watched us operate for years and years and years. And so when they're angry and we're, making a sweet little offer of help, they may go, you have no idea what to do socially. I wouldn't take advice from you in 10 million years. You don't even know how to have a friend. And it's like it just goes right to the place where we feel our confidence has never been good, or if we took us a long time to decide whether we wanted this child or not. And we finally decided, yes, we would have this child, but it wasn't easy to make that decision for reasons of, circumstance and, all kinds of good reasons. We had to think very, very hard. A child will often somehow know this. And so when we're reaching for them, trying to really be there for them, they'll go, you don't care about me anyway. You never really wanted me, and how they know this about us is very difficult to understand. But somehow children know this, by the time they're 9 or 10 or 11 years old, they know our weakest spots, and that's right where they're going to hit us. It happens in every family. And so what this means is that as people, we have the opportunity and in a way the necessity to go in and work on the places where our confidence got whipped when we were little, the places where we are very, very unsure of ourselves, so that we can really hang in while our children are showing us how hard that outer shell is. Because the way to deal with an angry child, and you can't do this every time your child is angry, but slowly but surely we need to develop the stamina to hang in with a child who's angry, and to excuse ourselves from their presence when we begin to get reactive. So I had, when my son was, I think my second son was 12 or 13, he was really angry a lot. He was furious, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was about, but it came up often. And I would go in and try to stay with him and basically be a listener, because the longer you stay with an angry person, the more likely it is that they will finally, somehow the limbic glow of your presence, although you're struggling, you're not feeling particularly glowing, the fact that you're still there, the fact that you didn't go away, the fact that their rejection of you did not make you disappear, slowly makes an impression on their limbic system, and it kind of melts that hard outer shell. And so the longer you stay, the more likely it is that at some point they will just be able to leak a few tears and tell you a little bit more about what's in that soft place, that soft, vulnerable, very hurt place inside. Or they'll be able to finally shout at you one big, terrible shout and tell you, what it is that's been eating them on the inside for the last 3 weeks, and begin to cry and sob and use your presence. Again, not happily, but once the feelings are out in the open, then you can basically stay, but not, you don't want to zoom in on them. You don't want to change anything very quickly. You just want to be present. And your presence will slowly soften that outer shell. And it might not soften it this particular angry incident. It might take 3 or 4. And in the meantime, if they zing you with some, horrible assessment of who you are and how you operate, you just go, oh my gosh, I think I have to leave for a few minutes. I'm going to get mad at you if I don't. So I'll be back in 3 minutes. And then you go into another room and maybe you pound on the wall. Maybe you jump up and down. What I used to do is walk around and around in the living room in a little tight little circle going, oh, goddamn kid, this parenting really sucks. I don't want to be here. All I want to do is get out of here. This is just, I am so tired of this. And so I just kind of mutter under my breath until felt like I could kind of keep my attention on him instead of on my own issues. Then I'd go back in and say, I'm back. And oftentimes he would just, look at me and just give me another really hard verbal shot. And I just go, okay, I'll be back in another 3 minutes. And I just go out trying to collect my wits. He's trying to say enough under my breath that I could then think about, again, going back in and offering my presence and my caring. So we would just, in this halting way, kind of make it through an anger incident so that I could finally sit next to him on his bed while he was facing the wall. And sometimes we would lie together. He would lie facing the wall, and I would just lie with my back to him also if I was feeling upset and mad. And we would just lie there back to back, just letting the physical contact and the physical presence in the same place kind of do its melting work. And, after 15 minutes of lying back to back, him seething on his side and me kind of trying not to seethe, but, I was indeed seething on my side. And slowly, he would sort of turn around so that he'd be facing up, and then I would turn around, and then we would just make a fresh start. It's like, are you hungry? I'm kind of hungry, and it's like, well, what have we got in the fridge? Well, I could make you a ham sandwich. Ew, that doesn't sound good. How about tuna? Oh, all right, let's do tuna. I could use some too. And then we could finally reconnect and kind of start from go. So, but really hanging in with an angry person, doing what we can to not react, or if we get reactive, making a quick exit, gathering our presence of mind again, going back in. And actually, there's a really great anecdote I'll tell you. It was a mom of a 10-year-old, I think she was maybe an 11-year-old, 5th grader. And this child had been had suddenly started screaming bloody murder and refusing to go to school. And just, her mom did not want to try to pick her up and put her in the car to force her to go to school because she was, a large child. But this child did not want to go to school. She was in a class that I was teaching, a starter class. And the other things that I knew about them were that the mom was living in an undisclosed location. She didn't give anybody her phone number or her email address. And the only reason that a parent would live in an undisclosed location is that someone is trying to hurt them. So I'm assuming that there was a presence in their life that was harmful and threatening, and anytime a child is screaming and screaming and screaming, they have fear to work on. So this mom had a very unworkable situation. She'd taken her child to a psychiatrist. She'd taken her child to, a counselor. Nobody had been able to help her figure out what to do. So she came to our class. And people in the class were very concerned about this mom. People who listened to her said, oh my gosh, this is a terrible situation. But she came back the second class, and she got all the materials and got the booklets, and then she didn't show up for 3 classes. And I had no way to get a hold of her. I didn't, what could I do? So I just assumed that we were one more agency that had, failed her. We were one more try for what should I do with my child that didn't work for her. But she came back, actually the second to the final class, and said, what I read the booklets, and I gave my daughter special time, 5 times one day. And I took 4 days off of work, and I decided to stay home and try to connect. I figured that she must be really scared. And the mom didn't refer to her situation at all, but she said, this must be fear. So we did special time. She laughed a bunch. She loved it. And then the second day, she started screaming and being furious at me. And I just stayed and I listened, and I stayed and I listened. And she would go back and forth between screaming bloody murder and being furious with me for a really long period of time, and then wanting to play and laugh and play and laugh. And then something would set her off and she'd scream and be furious with me again. And this happened off and on for 2 days. And at the end of the second day, she was like her normal self again. It's like she was calm. She was able to focus. She was easy about what we did. She wasn't on a hair trigger, and she wanted to go back to school. And so she's back in school. She's doing fine. I got my daughter back, and it was really just, doing special time and then hanging in through these terrible storms of feeling that really turned things around for this mom who had been in a really dire situation with her daughter. So it's not something we can just kind of pop up and do. Oftentimes we have to really work on places where we've been deeply hurt or deeply frightened by people who were highly irrational in our presence when we were small. But it is well worth doing. And there's one more question in here about a child treating their sibling badly. And I think I'll take that one as the last question that I'll answer. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. My son of 13 is polarizing for the moment with his sister of 8. I often have the feeling it's never good for one of my kids. I have 4, 16, 13, 12, and 8. So when a child is targeting a sibling, limits need to be set. It's really not healthy for the family to have that kind of targeting going on at random times, kind of blowing up the peace in the family at will. That just doesn't make for a family life that is fun to come home to for anybody. And the child who is doing this has got feelings under the surface that are popping up and for some reason getting aimed at a sibling. And it's not good for them to be doing hurtful things to someone that they are close to and will have a lifelong relationship with. Kids don't want to hurt one another, but when they're hurting so badly and they don't know how to show it or how to work on it, that's sometimes what happens. So one good way to deal with this is to just basically kind of put your arms on your son's shoulder. You don't have to do that, but it's just the image of, connecting physically and saying, your little sister is getting hurt by some of the hard things that you have to say to her. And it's not really good for the rest of us to have to listen to that. So, but I know you really have big feelings about her. And so I'm gonna show you, that was my husband. So I'm going to make a time every day when we are going to talk about your feelings about your sister, and you can tell me anything. I'll be delighted to hear. I want to hear, and I will write down, all of the things that make you upset about her. So we'll have 5 minutes of, you get to complain about your sister every day. And then you keep to it. You set aside a time and you go, okay, let's go back in the back bedroom. We're going to have our appointment now. And you take pencil and paper. Sometimes it really helps children to feel like we're taking them seriously if we make a list and show them the list. And we just listen to the complaints, listen to the things that his sister did, listen to the way he hates how she chews. She hums all the time and he can't stand all that humming. It bothers him a whole lot. And, why do you let her hum like that? And I don't know, it's like these tiny little pretexts that bring up big feelings of upset. The upset is perhaps not even related to his sister, but these little tiny pretexts let him feel it because they're tiny, because they're not related. And in order to help get closer to being able to help him with the core issue, you really do need to pay attention to all the complaints. So set aside some time, but then when he's complaining out in the open air in the family, oh, there she goes again. Her chewing is just, then you try, a vigorous snuggle. It's like, oh, there you go. You got to save that for our appointment. Come here, you, and you just kind of haul him out of his chair at the dinner table and haul him into the next room and give some playful punches. Or maybe it looks like being humorous and physically kind of both affectionate and offering a limit is not going to work because your 13-year-old is 6 feet tall and you're only 5'2". Then what you can do is to ruffle their hair. I don't know, just sort of, you could playfully change the topic of, let's talk about kangaroos. Tell me anything you know about kangaroos. And you just kind of like, sort of divert attention in a totally strange way, without announcing anything. You just bring everybody's attention to a topic that is, so far away from what was just offered that it's a surprise. You could try that. Actually, I have done this with siblings, with people on the street who are actually punching and harming, another person on the street. Just run up to them and say, what kind of milkshake do you like? Chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry? And I'm very insistent. Come on, tell me which kind of milkshake you like. This happened a long time ago when there was a big teenager kind of punching his little brother. I mean, really socking him hard right in the middle of the street. And I had no idea what it was about, but I just ran up and got close and just started asking these very insistent questions, to which I got no answer, but a very puzzled look. And, when I didn't get an answer to the milkshake question, I said, okay, well then, in your lunch, do you take an apple or an orange or a banana? Come on, tell me what you put in your lunch. Apples, oranges, bananas. Tell me what you like. And, both he and his brother thought I was absolutely out of my mind, that they'd run across some crazy lady. And they kind of pulled themselves together and looked at each other and said, we're going home. And so I started walking home, but the punching incident was over because I'd been so insistently posing questions that had nothing to do with the situation. So that's a technique you can try when things are, kind of out of hand. I don't know. You want to make a place for the complaints. In that place for the complaints, you can say, okay, here's your sister, and you hold up a little pillow. What do you feel like doing? And your child can punch the pillow, can squeeze the pillow, can bite the pillow. And it's like, ooh, you're getting her. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh no, the bite of death. And you can add a little humor there, see if you can get them laughing. It's like just being able to do something about the fury inside can lead to some emotional release. It could possibly lead to crying. It could possibly lead to laughter. It could possibly lead to, well, she gets all the attention around here and I don't get any. Slowly but surely over 5 days or 10 days of having these little, okay, I'm ready to hear your complaints about your sister. Your point is not to solve anything. Your point is to set up a time to listen, to make it safer and safer to say what his feelings are, and for that safety to slowly but surely, reduce the walls that he feels are between him and you, so that he can tell you what's at the bottom of this and begin to be able to feel the hurt feelings that are there, that he's been trying to flag you about for a while. So we have lots more questions, but I hope that some of the thoughts I've given have answered questions that I haven't read. And the class that we'll be doing, the preteens class that we'll be doing, I'm putting that class together. I'm filling it with anecdotes. I'm hoping to have many really juicy anecdotes from parents who have struggled with this stage of parenting, and have come up with interesting ways to solve the problems, interesting ways to reach their child, interesting grooves of connection that they have been able to revive out of childhood and get them started again, or that they have been able to start now that their child is, verging on adolescence, that have served them well. So I will be bringing lots of other parents' experiences to you, and telling you just some of the principles that we kind of need to hang on to as we find our way through the sometimes difficult to navigate territory of having a tween. So I have a little blurb about the class that I'm supposed to tell you about. So it's being designed for parents of children between 9 and 13, but anybody's welcome, of course. And you can pre-purchase the class. You can even do this today. And if you pre-purchase, I think you get a perk of being able to use a discount code, and then you get access to our Building a Listening Partnership class, which is a pretty thorough introduction to the art of listening and the art of finding a listener and developing a listening partnership, which ordinarily costs $89, but you get a discount code so that class costs just $5 on top of the tweens class. So you can pre-order. We're coming out with the class in January, and I think it's going to be helpful. I'm really trying to season it with lots of experiences that will encourage you and remind you that you're not alone in this struggle, that your children are good, that many of the behaviors they have are just little signals that life isn't as easy as it used to be for them, and that they've got challenges that they need time and attention in order to tell you about. So, and our listening tools will be helpful. So thanks for being here. Thanks for the love that you share, even when your children don't tell you that they are receiving it and are, that's the fuel they run on. It is the fuel they run on, and they would tell you if they could. And eventually, when they get into adulthood, they may be able to, appreciate you as fully as you deserve. So, meanwhile, I'll appreciate you very, very fully for all the caring and all the love and all the patience you're pouring in your child's direction. Thanks. Bye-bye.